Hello, my name is Kelly Tyler, and for the past 2 months I've been conducting research investigating teenage consumption habits at SweetFrog Premium Frozen Yogurt. So to start off, how many of you have ever been to a self-serve frozen yogurt establishment? All right, great. So that's the majority, and in particular, who's been to SweetFrog? All right, great. So most of you already have an idea of how SweetFrog works. The customer walks in through the door, grabs a cup, fills it up with as many different flavors as he or she wants, goes through the toppings line and piles on all of the toppings, and at the end, the price is generated from the weight. But what you may not have known, based on your experiences at SweetFrog, is some of the history behind it. SweetFrog is based on religious principles, which makes it a little bit different from its competitors. SweetFrog is just one of the many frozen yogurt establishments that has ridden the recent health craze wave to success. According to Frozen Food Digest, some of the reasons for this are because frozen yogurt is convenient, it's versatile, and consumers can control the amount as well as the price. And as we see here, it's also healthy, as this ad shows. One of the things that makes SweetFrog different from its competitors is that it was founded on Christian principles. So here we're going to watch a little bit of a video. This is going to be Derek Chow, the founder, talking about the 300 for 300,000 campaign. I'm just going to skip ahead.
In this country, where a lot of children go hungry, I really want to help and do something and make a difference one child at a time. With the 300 store opening, it's just been an incredible blessing, and I want to find ways to pay back to the community. We've set a lofty goal with such a great, wonderful organization, No Kid Hungry. SweetFrog is a good neighbor to the community that it serves. And so in 20, 30 years, I want people to know that we brought joy to a lot of people's lives in many different ways, not just through desserts, but through giving back to the community. These kids that really need it, and that's the kind of legacy that I want to leave.
So as we see there, the marketing campaign is more philanthropic based, which sets SweetFrog apart from its competitors, which is very useful because as we see here, a lot of the competitors visually look very similar. Yapple is right here, and if you go to Carytown, right next to the SweetFrog is a Yapple. They are literally, there's this tiny 10-foot video store separating them. And they look very similar. On the inside of a lot of these places is clean white plastic furniture. They all have similar pink and green colors, and they offer a very similar product. Some of the national competitors include Pinkberry, Red Mango, and Snob. But among them, SweetFrog has found its own niche, young families. And we saw in the video, a lot of the video, even before the clip we watched, was of young kids in the store and their parents. We can see from the bright pink and green colors and the cute frog cartoons, which are the store mascots, that the store really caters to young children. Kids want to go to SweetFrog, and parents want to take them there because it markets itself as a safe environment with a healthy snack. But if you go to any SweetFrog today, you're bound to find a group of teenagers relaxing at a table. And so the purpose of my research was to figure out why teenagers are drawn to SweetFrog, although it's really catering to a much younger demographic. So first, to understand why they're going to SweetFrog in particular, we need to understand a little bit more about the teenage market specifically. So teenagers are just becoming autonomous from their parents, meaning that they're becoming more independent. This includes financial autonomy. They're starting to get their own income and be able to pay for things, as well as transportation, they're beginning to drive themselves, and emotional autonomy, which means that they're less reliant on their parents' opinions on their consumption. And this autonomy greatly affects the decision-making skills, and we see the decision-making skills greatly develop during teenage years from high school to college-age students. These decision-making skills are influenced by several different factors. They're usually positively influenced by parents and by schools, whereas television commercials will provide less socially acceptable consumption practices. And finally, we have peers, which have a great impact on consumption, and they will provide both positive and negative effects to the decision-making skills. Now, the millennial generation in particular, which is what we're dealing with the younger Y generation, values a lot of self-expression. They really want to be unique, but at the same time, they still want to fit into the social atmosphere. So they're trying to balance both being an individual and being a part of the crowd. And in general, we see that among some of their values is technology, philanthropies, and authenticity. So now that we understand the teenage market in general, we're going to look at SweetFrog in particular. And some of the, and my research. This is my DST, which will provide an overview of the research I performed.
Imagine yourself walking through the doors of an establishment. The tables and chairs are white, clean, and crisp. A decadent candy bar sits on your lap. 2 smiling cartoons greet you from the back wall. This is the environment SweetFrog has created within every store in its franchise. Although it offers frozen yogurt, SweetFrog still evokes a friendly warmth. SweetFrog's values of creating a family-friendly environment that is a safe local hangout have remained the core goals of the franchise, even during massive expansion in the past 5 years. Its traditional values are the foundation of the store. They are even embedded in the name itself, because FROG stands for Fully Rely on God. In 2009, Derek Chaw was inspired to create SweetFrog in Richmond, Virginia, to serve as a safe place where kids and parents would both want to relax. On a hot summer day, after a few hours of shopping on Carey Street and rushing their kids from one store to another, young Richmond families would enter SweetFrog and experience the cool oasis that awaited inside. The franchise has since exploded with growth despite starting during a recession. The frozen yogurt phenomenon quickly expanded, now operating over 320 stores in 25 states and international locations. SweetFrog's brand name has become so successful that stores do not only sell SweetFrog frozen yogurt, but also memorabilia donned with the SweetFrog logo. Apparel, toys, and accessories are all for sale and provide the company with free advertisement when customers wear its logo in public. The SweetFrog t-shirts feature the store's beloved mascots, 2 bright, smiling cartoon frogs. The cute atmosphere appeals largely to children and young adults starting families. However, if you sit and watch customers flow through SweetFrog, you will soon notice that this brand has begun to attract teenagers as well. SweetFrog's initial primary target market was the young family. However, along with new parents and children, the company also has begun to attract teenagers, who now constitute one of its main markets. The purpose of this research is to understand which teenagers in particular are drawn to SweetFrog and by what. The study will focus on why teenagers, even those who may feel uneasy about the Christian background, choose to purchase frozen yogurt from SweetFrog. Is it the food, the service, the atmosphere? The study will investigate the gender of the teenagers in SweetFrog, how long it takes them to go through the frozen yogurt bar, their use of samples, the number of toppings, whether or not they sat down, and whether they came with parents. The purpose of this study is to observe the shopping habits of teenagers purchasing frozen yogurt in SweetFrog in order to understand both how the clientele base became attracted, as well as how SweetFrog can successfully market to the teenage demographic in the future. The research will help to develop a marketing plan, including customer satisfaction, which will include teenagers without exiling the strong young family clientele.
What introduction, that's wonderful. Alright, so this is the template that I used to fill out all of my information. And at the end of it, it looked like this. I had a 31-person sample with 16 teenagers and 15 college students, and I split up and compared the two samples. So some of the general observations that I noticed while I was sitting in SweetFrog. Only 2 people out of my sample entered the establishment alone, and they left quickly after their purchase. Most people came with their friends or their family. And if people came with their friends, they tended to move through the line in groups, meaning that if you and a friend were going through the frozen yogurt bar and you finished, instead of moving on to the toppings bar, you might stay with your friend, help them pick out flavors, help them sample. It's really a group experience, and everyone helps each other pick out all of the different flavors. So these groups create a little bit of a backup in line, and sometimes the line is like stuck behind 2 people who really just don't know what's going on and can't decide on anything. But no one's patient. Everyone is talking to each other, just sampling and enjoying the experience. But these groups of people did create a very interesting time range. So people spent between 58 and 411 seconds going through the line from when they first arrived at the yogurt bar to when they got to the cash register. The average time was 166 seconds, but this differed greatly between high school and college-age students. High school students only 154 seconds, where college students averaged 180. And so we're going to look at a graph here of this. This is the overall distribution of time spent in line. And we see here that 2/3 of the sample spent between 1 and 2 and 3 minutes in line. But this differed greatly between high school and college-age students. We see here that most college students spend between 1 and 2 minutes getting their dessert, while college students almost half spent between 2 and 3 minutes. So during my secondary research, I looked into why that might be. And this comes back to the decision-making skills, which are developing during the teenage years. College students are going to have more refined decision-making skills. They're going to, those decisions are going to take time for them to process through the entire line. There are a lot of different options, but they're going to take the time to figure out what it is they want, what's going to taste good together, and they're going to make what they feel is a better product, whereas high school students may just simply be grabbing whatever they see and piling on all of the toppings. So this time distribution, as I said, created a very relaxed atmosphere. You could go through the line in 58 seconds, but most people stayed and enjoyed the snack. We see 48% of people sat down, but in my opinion, that's a little bit skewed because as I was going through the research, the nights started to get more and more warm, and so you saw more and more people going outside, walking through the streets of Carytown, and just relaxing. So very few people go there just for a quick snack. It's more of an experience. They're relaxing. And SweetFrog's really encouraging an atmosphere of connection. So next we're going to look at the number of toppings, which is important to look at because the number and quantity of toppings directly influences the price of the frozen yogurt. And we get this great linear distribution of more customers preferring a greater number of toppings. This did differ a little bit again between high school and college-age students. High school students, half of them got 5 or more toppings, whereas college students, they still preferred a lot of toppings, which is good for SweetFrog, but it was a greater range from 3 or more. And again, this goes back to the decision-making skills of high school students versus college-age students, where high school students are going to be a little bit more refined in their tastes. They're going to take great pride in being creative and going through the line and take a lot of time, but they're going to be more refined in which toppings they choose. Next, I looked at going off of the toppings. There are a lot of different options, but only 2 people in the sample use the little sample cups that they provide. And this is because at that particular SweetFrog in Carytown, you have to ask them specifically for samples, and not everyone knows about the samples. But because we see in this picture here, there are 14 different flavors of frozen yogurt. They have an entire candy bar of toppings, 30 plus toppings. You have your 5 syrups at the end. And this can cause decision paralysis in consumers, which is when too many options may prevent purchase. And so SweetFrog really needs to ease the consumer's mind by providing and promoting more samples. And this will also relieve some of the cognitive dissonance, which consumers may feel after they've bought the frozen yogurt, that maybe they should have bought a different flavor, maybe this isn't exactly what they wanted. And so these will help make the decision-making skills a little bit simpler for high school and college-age students who may have a difficult time determining what it is they want. And lastly, we looked at who came with their parents, because this is a good signal of autonomy between high school age and college age students. Overall, 35% of teenage consumers came with parents, whereas high school in particular was 1-to-1, and collegiates, only 20% of them took their parents. It's important to note that college age students don't always live with their parents, so this could be a factor. But it also represents, again, the autonomy. And this is something that I saw in my interviews. The high school age student who had just started to learn to drive said she didn't go with her parents anymore because she didn't need them to drive. So this means that if given the opportunity, high school and college age students will prefer to go with their friends over parents. So we can learn a lot from this data. Going back to the original question, why are teenagers attracted to SweetFrog, even though it's catering to young kids and their parents? And this is because they're willing to overlook the cutesy, childish brand image because of the quality of the product itself. We see this in both the time they take and the pride they hold in creating their product. They really want this product to be unique to them, which is an important aspect of the millennial generation. But again, we see that SweetFrog, with 48% of the teenage population choosing to eat in or choosing to go outside and walk around with their friends, that's still a social environment, so it's that happy medium between being an individual and also being a part of the crowd. I also saw in my research that teenagers are willing to spend more money and sacrifice other things in order for it to be convenient, which I did see between the 2 stores I went to. Carytown had much more of a teenage flow, whereas I went to the one on Libby Avenue. It's a little bit more out of the way. You definitely need a card to get there, and it's not necessarily convenient. And I was actually only able to get one person from that store. So that means that in the future, SweetFrog should really focus on being in high traffic areas because this will pay off in the end. And lastly, as I talked about before, samples will provide the customers, specifically teenagers, with an ease of mind that will allow them to better enjoy the process. Are there any questions?
So I just want to tell you a little bit about Carytown. One of the things, you go through schools that are